without further ado, sit back and relax, and please welcome our CEO, Ashok Reddy.
Thanks, Jim. All right, welcome. First of all, thanks for taking the time to come here, because I always think time is the most precious commodity, and you're giving up your time to do whatever you're doing to be here. More importantly, if you look at outside, it's a beautiful day where we kind of planned for this, right? So we have a fantastic day outside, but you're still here. So we have a fantastic 2 days, 3 days here with, as James said, some of the best minds in the industry. All of you are changing, people's lives. You're changing things in what's happening. Even before AI was a buzzword, all of you are doing what the AI is doing, right? All the things in the last year. So I wanted to start with a little bit about my background, and I've been here 9 months now. And it all started with, I would say, a spider. It's right now in the beach here, but exactly 10 years ago, I was in Chapel Hill, and I got bit by a spider without knowing when I was taking out trash. And I went through quite a few of things where I had all sorts of nerve problems and others for a few months, and they ended up diagnosing as I had MS. And I thought my life has changed. So part of that, when I went through that whole thing, and until they did a brain scan, they couldn't tell whether I had it or not. But it's always a bad thing when you Google every day and try to find out. You always think that everything you have symptom, you have it. When suddenly your mind starts thinking that you have it. But anyway, end of the day, luckily I didn't have MS. But January of that year, I remember the Duke Hospital, when I found out, I said, why did you diagnose me? I had MS. And one of the things they said is, they always go with the highest risk from insurance perspective or malpractice. So if you want to rule out, you don't go with what it is. It could be potentially, it could be as much as anxiety attack or panic attack, but it could be, but they start with the highest thing. So anyway, that led for me, I'm a lifelong learner. So I actually decided I wanted to go back in school and learn. I got a master's in AI and machine learning in Georgia Tech 2 years after that. And so that's where I'm into the data science and machine learning. Then I also started picking up running. So I've got 2 things that came out of this. So I think, again, what I find is, I learn from all of you. It's about knowledge. And I think for me, KX is about knowledge extraction. What we stand for is about all of you are doing is extracting knowledge. You're helping people make better decisions. And that's really what we are here, right? About knowledge. And so one of the things, I've been talking to many people, all of you, so we are kind of opening up. So I met with Arthur. He's in New York. I'm in New York. And we talked about, how time and vector, time is the 4th dimension, right? So that's one of the things we discussed. But I think what it means is, you will see that a lot of the things we do in life, in business, the digital systems, you need to always take the effect of what's time. How is time important? So part of that, what you'll find today and this next 2 days is, it's not just about time series. It's about how do you bring time into everything we do. And then in that context, it's not necessarily just the time. We are all thinking about vectors, and I think that's a big thing, and I'll come back to it later part of the presentation. But that's how you kind of combine, for all of you who are physicists, it's the physics 4 things are that you need to have space and how you try to find answers to questions. If you use a vector-based approach, it's different than anything else. It's not just about time series, right? So I think I wanted to start with, first of all, many of you here, what I consider the KX family. Right? Many of you, I've never seen a more passionate community. And whenever we meet somebody, it's you not only believe that we are helping you differentiate, but many of you told me that this technology is the differentiator for you because you have made it work that way. So when one of you leave a company, you go to another company, you bring us to that because you believe that it can help the other company business model. So with that in mind, one of the things I think a lot of people have talked about, before I get into some of the data time house, just on the KDB and Q, even though we have not released officially for 2 years, there is a KDB 4.0, the team actually has been working very hard. We haven't changed the number, but we have been backporting things. So what you'll find that Andrew Wilson and Pierre is going to have a session, you'll actually get what we have done. There's so many innovations, whether it's vector support, parallelization, some of the things around optimization they've done and how it's going to help going forward. It's unbelievable, the type of things. I think they're some of the best engineers I've worked in my 30 years of my career. So what you find is they're actually doing things which are KDB 4.1 we are going to launch, but we are not going to launch it without thinking about working with customers. That's one of the things we've always done. We never break. We don't break. We know how important this technology is. So part of that is really, we want to release 4.1, but we're already working with several customers. So when you attend that session, you'll find some of the things what they're doing. The second part I'll talk about, we have is, Q gets, people think it's complex, but most of you who use Q, you know that it's the most simplest, it's the most flexible language. It's a vector language. One of the things we're also doing is there's a Visual Studio Code, which 14 million people use in the world, now is going to support officially from us or Microsoft. People can start coding in Q. It has intelligence built into it, autocomplete, documentation. You can do remote process. So if most of you, if you're interested in beta, we have that right now coming. So we'll have within a couple of weeks. It improves your productivity so much. So it's not that we just focus on all the other aspects, but it starts with making sure that those of you who are using Q, you're getting the best out of it, and now we're making it even better. The other thing is KX, not just for the family, because I think we hear KX is, it's only for Q or KDB, people who know Q. But I think what we have done in the last few years, or the last year or so, invest heavily to democratize it. One is through what we call PyKX. Python, you can use regular Python, but it's wrapping the performance of Q underneath. Right? So I'll just get to some of the things what we're doing there, but ANSI SQL, not many people realize we have a full ANSI SQL support. You can do as-if joins, everything using SQL. So for people who don't want to use Q or they don't have knowledge of Q, we have these two. And one of the things we're announcing tomorrow is actually open sourcing PyKX. It's actually available on PyPy already. The team is working with Anaconda, so you'll have a distribution the way people use Python. Right? You're going to be able to modify it. You'll have source code. So we are making KX more open. We don't want it to be kind of just having us develop everything. So you have 14 million people, Python people who know, so now you're able to use that in a context of what you know, where they can get access to. So we combine that with Visual Studio Code, which has got 14 million people using it. It's the environment you're familiar with. You used to use our developer, but it was not that easy to use. Now you have an opportunity to kind of get your colleagues and others to use what they already know. SQL, Python, and then we're joining the open source community, right? So that's coming tomorrow. The other things I think I wanted to talk about, we actually invited Gartner's chief research analyst fellow. He's one of the highest rated analysts. He leads all of the research in Gartner, Daryl Plummer. He couldn't make it. There is a data and analytics conference next week in London. He's going to be doing the same thing. So I'm going to give you a preview of what he did last month. And it kind of matters to us because we're trying to say it's not just about time series, what we do, how does it fit in the data ecosystem within your companies, within the hyperscalers. So I thought Daryl kind of does a very good job of talking about why time series and how does it fit into the ecosystem. So it'll take a few 3-4 minutes, but.
Done time series data, but you haven't done it well. And now you need to do it well. And that's going to mean a lot of things that are going to change you. You can even look in places like Star Trek. I'm a big Star Trek fan, like you couldn't tell. Star Trek had the Temporal Prime Directive. Now, you might not remember this, because you remember the Prime Directive was when Kirk would always say, we can't interfere with a pre-space going society. That's their number one rule. Well, in the show Star Trek Enterprise, they introduced the Temporal Prime Directive, where they said you can't interfere in time. So even in Star Trek, they had temporal data. And now, here we are in the real world, and temporal data is driving us to generate temporal data warehouses. Now, I know you're thinking, DB2 had temporal columns quite a while ago. A lot of companies have temporal data now, and we're seeing more of it come along. But the reality is, temporal columns are not enough. You got to be built from the ground up to handle temporal data at speed. You got to be able to do it effectively and consistently across all of your projects to get the kind of economic potential change that I am talking about. So it's not enough to just say we have temporal columns. Right now, you can go and see a lot of companies that are doing temporal stuff. You can see, companies like DataRobot, QuasarDB, you see it, but you see the ones that are re-architecting to support this are interesting. And what are we talking about here? First off, digital demands time. We're in a digital age today. And in the digital age, you have to have two things that we have not done well: time series data and geospatial data. Now, I'll come to geospatial in a minute, but the reality is that digital is best when two things happen. The virtual world merges with the physical world. That's real digital. It's not just using a mobile app. It's not just having a website or just running your business on computers. It's the merger of the physical world and the virtual world to create new value and outcomes. I'm talking about the fact that if a car is going to drive itself, it has to be able to see the other cars on the road. If a drone is going to fly itself, it has to be able to not run into trees or the window at your house. Birds run into my windows all the time. Why do birds do that? Well, they don't have enough data. That joke got away from me, I'm sorry. But the notion is that we need to not run into windows here. We got to have data that allows us to do digital things effectively. That includes being able to evaluate things over sequences of moments. Time series data now becomes very critical to what we do. And so if digital demands time, we have to take our data warehouses and not just force fit the data into them. We need to create temporal data. We're going to add it to our other layers. Our logical layer is BI, the SQL that we use for it. Our data science and ML, which we've been talking about for a while, which is now starting to come to fruition. And we create what I call a temporal data warehouse. A temporal data warehouse. It will keep time and distance, time and motion information. It will keep relative data. You can do regression analysis on time. You can look back over large periods of time or roll forward and then to begin to anticipate what's going to happen in the future, not just stamp it with time. You have to be able to operate across time to make things better. Now, here's a claim. I mentioned these vendors. One of them is KX Systems. KX Systems makes this claim that a temporal data warehouse, they call it a time house, is 100 times faster and 1/10 the cost for temporal data. Now, is there anybody out there who doesn't think that 100 times faster at 1/10 the cost is a pretty big economic potential? Now, if it's true, that's great. If it's not true, it's a nice thing to aspire to. And the notion is that if we have temporal data warehouses, we can do more with it. So how do we tie this back to the economics?
Actually, most of you, I don't need to tell about the performance and the value, but how do we drive outcomes, right? This is one of the things. He actually uses Syneos Health case study, which our friend from Syneos, Nataraj, is going to be presenting on AI superheroes talk tomorrow. And he'll go into the details of how they're using how did they use this technology to find COVID vaccines, and how they've gone from 6 years to 1 year, and now they're trying to get things done in 30 days. And there's economic value on it. So I think I just want to tie this back into more, what we are trying to do, what we are announcing, what we're doing is around this data timehouse. Why is this a summit, the data timehouse? I wanted to give you that context. The other thing is, there's lots of different type of data, but end of the day, I think what we are trying to show is what we do at KX is really complement the broader ecosystem. People already have data warehouses. There is data lakes. There is all sorts of things, BI tools, machine learning tools. But we are the engine as part of this. So we don't want to be replacing any of that, but we want to be the engine versus being a car. So what you see is that we actually have KDB not only supports time, but vector, which I'll get to in a second. But it's all about helping real time as well as how do you get to it with SQL, Python, and very soon in a natural language using something like GPT, and make it democratizing. So this is really where we're going and where we are. And part of that is also the challenge always has been not only the language, but non-functional requirements, right? How do you actually get to this value with KDB and Q? That was one of the challenge for us. So as part of that, we've been doing a lot of work with our KDB Insights and others. So I wanted to talk about some strategic partnerships. And starting with the first one, we announced it this morning as a press release. But this is something is fantastic opportunity for all of you who are using AWS or looking to, look at time, creating what we are talking about data time house, but more than that, how do you get to the value, speed at the thought, insights of the speed of thought. So to kind of introduce you to the announcement, I'm going to invite Saman Farr, who is the Vice President for AWS Financial Services, to kind of share what AWS announced with KX today.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you. Hi. You can hear me? Okay, great. So thanks. Let me sort of give a little bit of context around this. We had customers, and just a little bit briefly, I'm responsible for financial services-oriented technology services, which in AWS jargon means products, at AWS. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we were looking at and what we did. Customers were asking us to help them with basically their mission-critical trading infrastructure. This was a lot of, I think this is, you guys are all in this field, or most of you, know the issues. The problems were, look, markets are super volatile. They go up, you go, it's easy to get 3x the base suddenly, and it comes back down. There's these big swings in volume in the data coming in, and there's big swings in the analytics that we need to do. So, it might be driven by, hey, there's a lot of volatility, and that's what's driving the need to experiment more, do more analysis. It could be, for example, some risks, some certain risk in an asset class or in a particular geography, and there's a spike in analytics need to happen. It could be, you know all the various things yourselves. It could be, for example, an opportunity that comes up that's to uncover, and need to bring a lot of analytics to bear on this. And we need to be able to do this quickly, easily, and without a lot of hassle. And I was in a restaurant with a friend of mine. He's at a hedge fund, and he was saying, look, Saman, let me tell you what my life is. What? He said, you see this restaurant? It's got 15 tables in here. Now imagine I'm in the kitchen as the cook, and I got a 4-burner stove. That's the infrastructure I'm working with. And what I've got to do is table 5 puts an order in. I got to get all those orders for those people in table 5 out at the same time, and I got 4 burners, and there's 6 people at table 5. So I got to move these things in and out. This is the various analytic workloads. Pause one, put the other one on, bring this on, and do all of this to try and make sure that they arrive warm and on time for table 5. Meanwhile, I know table 7 over there has ordered their drinks, but somebody ordered lamb chops, and that takes a while. And I've got to, in the middle, sneak the lamb chops in on one of these burners. And my life is around this. And where what I want to be doing is focusing my people and myself on more analytics and the core of the business. So I go, well, why don't you get another 4-burner stove? And he said, look, we thought of that. Okay, now I've got 8 burners. When we did that, we also opened up the patio outside. So now there's 15 more tables, and I've got 8 burners now to worry about, and it just doesn't scale. You get the idea. So that's the context around this. So KX and us got together and thought, like, what do we want to do about this? And our thought was having something around a managed service here. And at AWS, we do this for relational databases. I mean, some of you may be familiar with them. Where it's managed, you provision it, you provision more capacity, more storage, more compute. You use it, you pay what you use for, take it down if you don't want it, and it's managed for. It's there. It's managed for you. And that's the way we were thinking about this. So we worked with a wide cross-section of KX customers to make sure we understand the use cases for how is KDB used. And basically be able to address the various situations in the front office, the middle office, the back office. And there's a lot of creative ways people use KDB, and it's not just there and people issue queries. It's more complicated. It's a building block of a lot of systems. I mean, you guys know well. So what we did is what we wanted was to have a system that has horizontal scaling, that can keep up with the market volume, that you can launch ad hoc analytics on demand when you want it, and take it down when you don't. And then the ability to expand the access to this data to other parts of the organization. So many of us are at firms that, there are other departments that are not using the data and so on. Well, if there's an easy way for them to get to this without long provisioning cycles and all of the world of the burners and buying more stoves, without all of that, and address the operational aspects of running these plants, from patching to high availability and other aspects of this. So what the customers told us, hey, look, it's kind of a few important things. Make sure we need to be able to deploy our real-time processing and historical analysis. So we need to be able to set up RDBs, HDBs, gateways. The ones that we already have need to work. We're not going to go and reinvent the wheel and everything like this here. That needs to be able to work on this. And we want to be able to move our existing KDB Insights workloads and benefit from whatever goodness you guys think you can come up with, and be able to do new things also. So out of this, we built a managed service. And that's what I'm really pleased to announce today. It's FinSpace with Managed KDB Insights, which is a managed service that does these things that I just described. And there's going to be a few, some of the team after Ashok's keynote are going to be talking about it. They'll give a presentation, and they'll be around to answer any questions and so on and so forth. They're here on site for this event, and you can hear what that does. And it's going to be generally available for use in early June. So feel free to ask questions, and Vinny and Tim are going to be doing a presentation later.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. So with that, it's again, we have a full session following on this one. So one other things I wanted to announce is we've been working with Snowflake, and some of you customers who kind of wanted us to work and integrate again in terms of the data warehouse from a Snowflake, and how do we bring the queries and other things, what you like, the power of the bringing insights to the code, to the data, right? So if you're interested, obviously, there is actually a talk on Friday from our colleagues from Snowflake will be here talking about that partnership. There will be a blog which you can see how that works. And if you have other use cases, we'd love to work with you. And then I also want to call out our friends at Data Intellect, which used to be the Aqua Q. I know many of you talk about not having enough Q skills and others, so we're kind of expanding our ecosystem. We have more friends and family now. So I would like to thank them for sponsoring, as well as they've got outside here if you want to meet with them. And I think the last thing I want to talk is really what our core DNA is for the company. We originally were built vector native, right? Everything you hear about AI today, generative AI, ChatGPT, is all about taking unstructured information, large language models. And somebody told me this morning, a customer, we actually have been doing this for large data models. Instead of LLM, we are the LDM. And we did this before anybody thought about it. And it's all creating vector embeddings, and then you're doing similarity search or anomaly detection and all those things. So we can do that. And what we are announced today is KDB.ai. The website is open. We are launching a new offering, which basically will do several things. One, you can actually use unstructured data, like if you want to point at sec.gov, sentiments, all those things, you can bring it in, being able to combine that with your time-based information or any data. So you can have a LDM plus LLM together. Because remember, the large language models don't handle time-based information. They also don't have facts to verify. There's no explainability. You can actually have that with KDB.ai. So one, we are the LDM. The second, we can also ingest from any LLM, Bard, GPT-4, doesn't matter. Or you can use open source from Hugging Face and others. If you want to train your own models, you don't want to use GPU. That's our number one feature. People are on wait list to get GPUs until December. You don't need GPUs. You can actually do this with the KDBAI. So I'm very excited about this. There is actually a blog. It's a very good paper on KDBAI. If you want to read about it, share within the companies. And we are actually doing several things in here, which is the querying you can do with Python and SQL. We're also working on a natural language interface, so you can actually ask questions in English, and we'll be able to map that. And I also recommend that you attend the Data as a Service from Igor. You'll see how they've done it. They were able to do natural language queries, map some functional aspects. They went from a few thousand queries a month to 65 million queries a month. You can see how they've done it and what you could be seeing if you democratize this for everybody in your companies to use it. Every customer I talked to this morning, they all first thing said, I want to work on it because this is our number one thing in our company. There's regulations, we don't know what happens, there's no explainability, we don't have GPUs. So I think this is really what I find vector native, people call it, but there's also vector databases out there now. Small companies were coming up and trying to just do one small piece of this. But what we feel is we are the knowledge database for AI. We can run on standard CPUs. We also have produced, things which we can do, multiple LM models. So anyway, that's my, this is one of the things what we're changing the company. KX, is, as I said, is knowledge extraction. KDB is a knowledge database. And what you have been doing is already this vector. What we're offering is you can actually take this for non-structured data as well as any other use cases you want to do that. And the good thing is all the things we just talked about AWS, we'll be able to take advantage of it with this very shortly. So all the non-functional requirements, all the things you have to go through, you don't have to do it, but you are able to get to type of things what you want to do here with generative AI combined with time-based data. So with that, I want to thank again for all of you to be here. We'll be here, I'll be here the next couple of days. But again, I think all of you, I feel like humbled with all the type of things what you do. You are running some of the best companies, the biggest companies in the world, doing some mission critical things. And you're trying to change the world, whether it's healthcare or whatever, right? So thank you for what you do. And hopefully, this 2 days will help you to also enhance your knowledge. And I also want to thank the people who are coming and presenting, all our customers, what they've done, really cool things. And you can hopefully leverage that in your companies. So thank you.